You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Trump names JD Vance, once one of his fiercest critics, as his 2024 running mate. The former US president has chosen JD Vance, the rookie senator from Ohio, as his vice presidential pick. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Elon Musk, the billionaire and entrepreneur and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, plans to support Donald Trump's presidential campaign with substantial financial backing. According to the report, Musk will contribute $45 million each month to bolster Trump's bid for re-election. Donald Trump also notched a legal win as a federal judge dismissed his classified documents case. The Pakistani government has said it plans to ban Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the party of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan. China's economy slowed more than expected in the June quarter, increasing the likelihood that a gathering of top officials in Beijing this week will unveil efforts to rekindle growth. Apple's India annual sales surged 33%, hitting a record of almost $8 billion as China revenue slows. Well, a big focus. Former US President Donald Trump chose JD Vance, the rookie senator from Ohio, as his vice presidential pick. Trump made the announcement at the Republican National Convention that kicked off in Milwaukee just 2 days after he survived an assassination attempt at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. The selection of Vance, who only joined the Senate in 2023, will likely alarm Ukraine and its supporters because Vance has been a key figure in blocking Ukraine aid, writing in April that he remains opposed to virtually any proposal for continued funding. But JD Vance's rapid rise from obscurity to the vice presidential nomination has been called an only in America tale, one that will shape what America is, for better or worse, for generations to come. Well, in the Senate, Vance has cultivated a dual identity as key Trump ally and leader of the GOP's populist national wing. But who will he be as a vice presidential candidate? Well, Voice of America correspondent Katherine Gypson joins us with the latest from Ground Zero. Thanks so much, Katherine, for making time for us. Back in 2016, during the election, Mr. Vance emerged as a vocal critic of Donald Trump. He actually told Charlie Rose that I'm never a Trump guy in 2016. On NPR, he said things like, I think that Trump's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place. And then he voted for Trump in 2020. He has undergone quite a dramatic transformation into a Maga power figure, right?
He absolutely has. You know, he once called Trump America's Hitler, was wildly critical of the former president. But of course, as we've seen, he has made the change now to become Trump's vice president. We see the images of him standing side by side with Trump for the very first time as we're speaking in the convention center in Milwaukee. He has expressed a desire to serve on this ticket because, as you mentioned, he is part of that nationalist populist wing of the Republican Party and believes that Donald Trump represents that for him as well.
Well, in the Senate, Vance has cultivated a bit of a dual identity as a key Trump ally. In fact, does the program for this convention provide a window into Trump's electoral strategy to keep up his populist appeal while peeling off voters who typically vote Democratic and who could swing key Rust Belt states and suburban areas in November?
Absolutely. So each night of this convention has a theme. Tonight's theme was making America wealthy again. A lot of the criticism from Trump's supporters of President Biden is that under the 4 years that he's been president, America's economy has suffered. They argue that with 4 more years of President Trump, America's economy will thrive once again. We'll see issues and themes like that throughout this convention each single night. And JD Vance coming from Appalachia, one of the poorer parts of the United States, will be a key part of making that argument. In his book, Hillbilly Elegy, he argued that he pulled himself up on his own, worked his way up from poverty, obscurity, to now look at him standing on the stage of the Republican National Convention, the vice presidential nominee.
Katherine, thank you so much for joining us with the latest from Ground Zero. Well, JD Vance has said that if he had been in Mike Pence's shoes back in 2021, he would not have certified the results of the 2020 election. He is also a leading critic of U.S. support for Ukraine. And at the moment, he's at the Republican National Convention alongside Trump. But regarding the assassination bid, well, we heard from an eyewitness who was at the campaign rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday. Here's what the eyewitness told NDTV.
In a sense, because now I'm sure you've also been watching it. We have been following this story for the time it happened, and it's been more than 24 hours. Investigation is going on. President Joe Biden came out and said, let's not get into any conjectures. Let the law enforcement agencies do their job. But as somebody who is a follower, who's a supporter of Donald Trump, is there a sense about something more that could have happened, or do you also believe it was a lone wolf attack and thankfully Donald Trump is still alive?
There's always more to it. There's always stuff. We're going to be finding stuff out for the next few weeks. We've already found out a lot this past 24 hours, but there's always more to the story that's not blatantly obvious right off the bat. The whole situation was kind of strange that it was a single person was able to put a ladder up onto the building that was so close, and that building had a great vantage point of the whole thing. So why Secret Service hadn't scoped the building out or didn't even have a member of security up on that building to make sure something like this didn't happen is just crazy to me, that there weren't those security measures taking place before he came out. It almost seems a little negligent on whoever was making decisions. And since then, we've also heard that, and I can't say whether this is true or not just yet, but we've heard that the gentleman who had taken the shot to kill the would-be assassin had sights on him for about 3 minutes, and he was being told not to take the shot, which is believable, just because I feel like there's a lot of corruption in today's politics and government, and a lot of it doesn't make sense, but I'm looking forward to figure out what the truth is in the next coming, days and weeks after more information is released.
Well, the spotlight is on the Secret Service and their response. But former U.S. President Donald Trump has chosen JD Vance, the rookie senator from Ohio, as his vice presidential pick. They are currently at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Trump made the announcement as the RNC kicked off just 2 days after he survived an assassination attempt at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. Welcome back. We have a delegate to the Republican Convention in Milwaukee, Dr. Sampath Shivangi, on the broadcast with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Does this program for the convention provide a window into Trump's electoral strategy to keep up his populist appeal while peeling off voters who typically vote Democratic and who could swing key Rust Belt states as well as suburban areas in November?
And of course, we have election in 90 days more. Things might change a little bit, but I think it does help him. He has a great exposure worldwide, and just not only in the US, because US citizens are all over the world, and they may have a ballot voting done that will affect. Of course, he has already developed kind of sympathy. There will be at least 5 to 10% sympathy votes coming out of President Biden, Democratic Party to Republican, during the election time. I'm confident he's going to win this time. There is no ifs and buts.
Right. The Trump campaign has also unveiled Quite a list of more than 24 speakers at this RNC. We know it includes Nicaraguan and Peruvian immigrants. But sir, is this RNC starkly different from the one in 2016?
I think so, because there is more cohesion, there is more cooperation amongst the Republicans. In Delaware, which is Biden's hometown, he born, grew, and worked, they practiced there. And today's Delaware delegation, 100% they are with President Trump. And I'm myself surprised. Of course, they may have some Republicans, but I think 14 out of 14 voting for President Trump, I think it was a unique, phenomenon in support of his candidacy. I think he has mellowed down since shooting. President Biden called him personally, which they have not spoken in maybe years and decades, but President Biden was kind enough to call him. And so they have developed a rapport, and that makes a lot of difference in his outlook.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us with those quick comments on the NDTV network. The big focus. The world's second largest economy is grappling with a real estate debt crisis, weakening consumption, and an aging population. Trade tensions with the United States and the European Union, which have sought to limit Beijing's access to sensitive technology, as well as putting up tariffs to protect their markets from cheap, subsidized Chinese goods, are also dragging growth down. In fact, official statistics showed the economy grew by only 4.7% in the second quarter of the year. It represents the slowest rate of expansion since early 2023, when China was emerging from a crippling zero-COVID policy that actually strangled growth. Analysts, though polled by Bloomberg, had expected 5.1%. The figures came the same day that China's ruling Communist Party kicked off a key meeting led by President Xi Jinping, focused on the economy. But for further clarity, we have with us China expert Gunjan Singh, who's also Associate Professor at the O.P. Jindal Global University. Thank you so much for joining us on the World 24/7. Realistically, can we expect any major reforms at this meeting, or should we expect a modest policy tweak that expands high-tech manufacturing and delivers a sprinkling of support to housing and households?
Good morning. The third plenum is started on 15th. It's a 4-day event, will conclude on 18th. And as you rightly mentioned, the quarter figures were not in as China expected it to be. I think everybody was expected China to grow at least 5 or 5.1%, but the figures stand at 4.7%, which is little troubling for Xi Jinping at the moment. However, I think the figures also indicated that China had $100 billion trade surplus for just the month of June in the quarter. So that's something positive. Coming to the third plenum, it's been delayed, we all know. I think everybody was eagerly waiting to see when this will happen. Third plenums have historically been an insight into how China's economy is going to progress, or what path the Chinese Communist Party will undertake vis-a-vis economy for the next 5 years. Major reforms would be, I don't think Xi Jinping is in a position or in a situation to undertake major reforms. But the challenges are huge, like, as you mentioned, debt crisis, real estate, innovation, the challenges with the global trade, the upcoming US elections and tariffs and things, all will definitely be the focus. Plus, unemployment is also one of the major challenges. Domestic consumption is less in China. Xi Jinping had adopted or pushed for the dual circulation, which is promoting domestic consumption. Post-COVID, we've not seen any improvement in that. Chinese domestic consumptions are still way lower than global standards. So yes, the third plenum is much awaited, and there are major issues that Xi Jinping will have to focus on. But I still not think there'll be any major thing. I still think the focus may be on innovation and trying to keep the momentum of reforms going.
Right. But Beijing has said that it's aiming for 5% growth this year, enviable for many Western countries, but a far cry from the double-digit expansion that actually for years drove the Chinese economy. Gunjan, but experts highlight that the economic uncertainty is also fueling a vicious cycle that has kept consumption stubbornly low there.
Yeah, see, China has traditionally been an economy which focuses on saving. Chinese people tend to save a lot. We know that. And that has been one of the major challenges for the Communist Party, that pushing Chinese people to consume what they are producing. And Chinese government or the CCP, Xi Jinping still believe that if the domestic consumption improves, Chinese economy will survive this major turbulent phase. However, COVID, the way the global economy is dwindling, the way China is being pressurized with tariffs and other things, the Western world putting other limitations on the export of EVs and solar panels. So Chinese economy today, we cannot see it just in isolation. The global geopolitical scenario is
Right.
also a major player. And COVID restrictions have also pushed Chinese people to save a lot. The stringent policies that the Xi Jinping government followed during COVID and the problems that the Chinese people faced has also had an impact on how Chinese people will spend. So the Chinese government will also, in this plenum, will also have to push towards building the trust of the people in the economy.
Yes.
Right now, I feel the Chinese people lack a little bit of trust in the way the economy is functioning and the Chinese Communist Party's response towards them. So it is more of a trust factor, I feel. If the Chinese government can show that it is
Right.
pushing towards major reforms or reforms which will help the people in the long run, maybe we can see some increase in domestic consumption too.
Well, we'll be keeping a close eye on the key takeaways. Analysts say a lot is required for a full rebound in China as the country's economy has yet to bounce back more than 18 months after damaging COVID-19 restrictions ended. But thank you so much, Gunjan Singh, for joining us. In other news, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will pay a two-day visit to Mauritius with an aim to explore ways to expand bilateral ties. Dr. Jaishankar will call on the Prime Minister of Mauritius. He will hold bilateral meetings with other senior ministers. This is what the Ministry of External Affairs has announced. Ghazali has been tracking the latest developments for us. He joins us over the phone line at the moment. Ghazali, the Ministry of External Affairs has reiterated that this visit is a reflection of India's neighbourhood first policy. Take us through the External Affairs Minister's plan of action.
See, this is one of the first bilateral visits or engagements undertaken by the External Affairs Minister while he will be visiting Mauritius today for a two-day trip. And Mauritius has a good relations with India. All the bilateral relations with Mauritius only has a scope of improvement, but it has been on a very good or cordial note. So this visit certainly underscores the importance of the India-Mauritius relationship and is also the reflection of India's neighborhood-first policy, vision saga, and commitment to the global south, because India is also emerging as the voice of global south. In the last 5 years, in the previous term of Mr. Jaishankar, he has been a very vocal voice of the global south, and that's exactly what it will be exhibited when India's foreign minister will be visiting Mauritius and will meet his counterparts there. Because in the last couple of weeks, we have seen that India's foreign minister or even prime minister visited Moscow, then Austria, and even before that, EM had also visited Sri Lanka. So the neighborhood first policy was exhibited even during the oath-taking ceremony of the prime minister. Even after that, we had the BIMSTEC's foreign ministers meet, which concluded recently. So India's focus in its immediate neighborhood is still the priority, which will be reflected by Mr. Jaishankar's visit to Mauritius for a two-day trip.
Ghazali, as always, thank you so much for joining us with the latest. The Ministry of External Affairs has reiterated that this visit is a reflection of India's neighbourhood first policy. Major development, the Pakistan government has announced its plans to ban Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the party of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan. In fact, in an announcement made by the Information Minister, the party was accused of working against the country's interests. Here are the finer details. In a new major development, the Pakistani government has announced its plans to ban Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the party of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan. In an announcement made by the Information Minister, Ataullah Tarar, on Monday, the party was accused of working against the country's interests, citing evidence of enticing violent protests last year and the leaking of classified information.
The foreign funding established, 9 मई के हमले established, साइफर का केस established, अमेरिका में रेजोल्यूशन एस्टैब्लिश्ड, तो हुकूमत ने यह फैसला किया है, इन तमाम चीज़ों को देखते हुए, सबूतों को देखते हुए, वफाकी हुकूमत पीटीआई को बैन करने के लिए केस मूव करेगी। तहरीक इंसाफ पे पाबंदी लगाने जा रहे हैं।
Tarar also stated that the case would be brought to the Supreme Court and that the government planned on bringing forth treason charges on the former Prime Minister and 2 other senior party leaders. The announcement comes just days after the Supreme Court declared Khan's party entitled to a share of seats in national and provincial assemblies for women and members of religious minorities. Tarar's statement also revealed plans of filing a review appeal against this Supreme Court ruling. The government's plans also come after the Supreme Court acquitted Khan in his illegal marriage case, in which the court ordered prison authorities to release Khan immediately. However, the former Prime Minister is still behind bars. PTI has issued a Twitter statement in response, calling the plans a disgusting attempt to erase the embarrassment caused by the Supreme Court's historic decision on certain seats. Imran Khan served as Prime Minister from 2018 to 2022 and has been jailed for nearly a year. He faces multiple charges in over 100 cases, several of which have been suspended or overturned by courts. The former Prime Minister remains a popular political figure despite his convictions and claims that the cases are politically motivated, aimed at preventing his return to power. With Samia Afsar, Parmeshwar Bawa for NDTV. Well, in other news, Apple's annual sales in India hit a record of almost $8 billion, underscoring a rapidly growing market where the iPhone maker now assembles more of its devices and operates 2 flagship stores. The India revenue jumped about 33% in the 12 months through March from $6 billion a year earlier, according to a person familiar with the matter. But Apple's pricey iPhones accounted for more than half of the sales as per our sources. Sakshi Bajaj is tracking the finer details. She joins us live at the moment. Sakshi, Apple's India sales have hit a record high of nearly $8 billion.
That's right. Apple's India sales hitting a record high of nearly $8 billion. Now, this, of course, shows that Apple's India revenue jumps about 33% in just 1 year. iPhone sales account for more than half of the total sales, as you mentioned, and experts saying that the surge in sales is reflecting Apple's effort to increase market share in India. It also goes to show that Apple's progress is steady in diversifying beyond the Chinese market, in particular as far as manufacturing and revenue streams at large are concerned. So experts clearly cheering the fact that Apple's India market share is now jumping. Apple also now, of course, this data indicates, as per experts and initial reports, that Apple now makes as much as 14% or about 1 in every 7 of its flagship devices in India.
Sakshi, as always, thanks so much for joining us with that brief update. Thank you for investing your time and watching this episode of The World 24/7. We'll keep tracking the latest developments for you. Do stay tuned.